this is Dave Fryer. Welcome to the Reluctant Agilist. Derek Huether's here. Derek, say hi to everyone.
Hey, everyone.
This is the last thing I'm going to record this year, and Derek is here, and we're doing it in video, which I don't usually do that much anymore, but Derek and I have always done our podcast in video. And we're going to talk about a couple different things. One of them is lean coffee, which Derek has been running a lean coffee for 172 years this year in Baltimore, right?
So pretty close.
And we're going to talk about what it is, but also how it's changed and what kind of things we see. I run one for my students as well. So Derek, before we get started with that, would you mind telling all these fine people who you are and what you do?
My name is Derek Huether. I am a solutions engineer at a small startup out of Sydney called Atlassian.
Small startup. It rules the agile world.
I demonstrate the art of the possible. I describe, I speak with executives and organizations, both private and public sector, and understand what their problems are, and then explain how a collection of products within the Atlassian platform, how it can help solve their problems.
All right, cool. And we used to work together a long time ago, and we've done a lot of podcasts together. And Derek's also written a couple of books, and one of them came out in the past year. Do you have them handy by any chance? There we go, Metrics Cookbook, which is a really great... Second what?
Finishing the second edition now.
Yeah. All right. So it's a really great book to check out if you're trying to figure out what kind of things to be tracking with your teams and performance and things like that. There's a lot of good tips in there and suggestions for stuff to pay attention to. All right. So lean coffee. We need to talk about what it is. I run into people every class who've never heard of it before, which I still don't understand. Really? But how would you describe what it is to somebody who'd not heard of it before?
A lean coffee is a self-organizing meeting that instead of having a predefined topic or list of topics in which you would have conversation around or discuss, those who join the lean coffee or attend the lean coffee, they will identify topics that they want to discuss or are going to discuss. An agenda is formed. The group that are there priority vote what items they want to talk about first. And then when you're out of time, you have that confidence of knowing that the items that you've self-identified as the highest value topics have been covered.
Cool. Yeah, it's kind of like a mini open space.
Indeed.
Almost. Yep. And it was started by Jim Benson and Jeremy Lightsmith in 2009. And it's not just technology. Like they're all over the planet in all different kinds of fields. And if you go to leancoffee.org, you can see leancoffee.org. I just want to check the URL. You can see how they work, how to start one. They have a directory there of different ones that are run. And I know in New York City, at least before the pandemic, you could literally go to an Agile related lean coffee at least once a day, every day of the week.
Really?
All over the place. And obviously, since the pandemic, everybody's switched to virtual. But you've been running one in Baltimore for a really long time, right?
Yep. So it was interesting. I met Jim many years ago at one of the Agile conferences. It might have been the one in Texas. But I
refer to that as the one I was really drunk at.
Oh, really? Get in line on that one. But I wanted to create some type of meetup, but I was tired and lazy probably. And in that I didn't want to identify speakers and have an agenda. And there was just a lot of complexity.
You want to put a lot of effort into it.
That's right. I wanted the outcome, but I didn't want to put in a lot of effort.
Okay.
And I found Jim online. When I was writing about personal compound, I think I found Jim online and I found out about lean coffee. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. It was when I was at Leading Agile and I started it, out of Baltimore. I'm about 30 minutes outside of Baltimore. And so I started doing this lean coffee, and we're approaching 100 lean coffees. So Every first Friday for however many years it's been now. So I believe March is our 100th lean coffee. And it's been awesome. It's evolved a little bit. As we all know, with the pandemic, things had to evolve to survive, but we never stopped. If anything, now it's created more opportunities, more options. Once the pandemic subsides, now we're going to have both virtual and
You're going to keep doing virtual, but also do in person?
Yeah. Well,
wow.
Yes.
Or are they all going to be together as one?
No, I found for the best experience, having everybody there physically present, clearly that's the best experience. But also people realize, wow, this is pretty easy. If I just roll out of bed and turn on the camera, I can take part in this versus driving to the coffee shop and all that. So in order not to exclude anyone, my goal will then be to do yes, and we will do both physical and virtual going forward I want people to feel safe. I want them to be present. And honestly, right now, we have a couple of people that are excited about coming back together physically, but then that would make, if anybody feels uncomfortable, then I'm not doing my job as their host, and the organizer.
So that's one of the things that I'm wondering what's going to happen. Like for me, if you said, well, you can engage in person or online, like I'd like to say that I would engage in person, but I know myself well enough to be like, yeah, I'm just going to stay home. And if I can do it that way, it's probably easier. I think you get a different experience, but there's some people that have adapted to this. They're probably better online or more open online than they would be in person, especially if they're not worried about getting infected with the pandemic.
Agreed. Right. So it's almost as though someone's inhibitions lower when they're in virtual. I remember hosting them, and I was always concerned that the lean coffee would get too big, because there was this certain critical mass that if there were too many people around the table, I would see some people that were not the extroverts, if the potential introverts, they would lean back in their seats and they wouldn't engage. And that, it didn't break my heart. It made me sad. I was disappointed, because then again, I felt like I was failing them as an organizer or as a host, that I wasn't creating an environment in which they felt that they could engage. And that part of it was controlling how many people were there.
Okay.
There's not that much in the virtually. If you don't want to engage, you just turn your camera off and you mute your mic and you can just listen. And we've been conditioned over the last 2 years that that's okay. You see people do that all the time. And so it's really no different with lean coffee.
So I want to touch on that, but then come back to another thing you said in a minute. So that I have the opposite experience, because in all my classes, everybody's required to have their camera and their mic on. And I run a lean coffee for my students, and I don't require it there. And so when their mic is, the camera's off, I'm like, that to me is really, I'm like, what the hell? Like how is that okay?
Right.
But, we don't have that rules, and people engage in whatever level they're comfortable. I think that's really good. How many people do you have in person if you're worried about too many? Like what's an average size for in person before the pandemic?
It was 10 to 15.
Okay. Because when I do them virtually, I'm getting like 5 to 10.
Yeah. And of those, how many RSVP'd?
Oh, I don't make anybody RSVP, but I do follow. What's been really cool online is that it's become like this group of people that like the same folks show up every time. Yeah. And we've developed this like rapport where, I really look forward to it. Like I know that I'm going to get to see all these people and catch up, and we always find cool stuff to talk about. But it's kind of provided that camaraderie that I guess I would normally get from coworkers.
Agreed.
So that's kind of cool.
Because I joined Atlassian a week or so before the pandemic really kicked into high gear. And so I've never had an opportunity to actually interact with my colleagues physically. Whereas, there are some people that are on my lean coffee, part of my lean coffee community, that I have met, and I shared First Fridays with them for a couple of years before we went pandemic. So we have that carryover relationship. And so, right, if any one of them needs something, I feel compelled even more so because we had that relationship pre-pandemic.
Cool. All right. So in a minute, I want to talk about how to run one, and set one up in case anybody's curious about it. But like, as the organizer, what's the win for you? And we're about to start a new year. People might, think, hey, that's a great idea. I should start one of those too. What do you get out of it?
I believe I'm giving back to the community. I'm just creating space. I've done my job if I can create a safe place where people can share ideas.
Okay.
And if someone gets something out of it, if they get an answer, if they get a question answered, or they feel enlightened in a certain area, then I've done my job. But primarily my job is create a safe space where people feel that they can speak and be heard.
Okay.
And that's it. If you just leave it there, you can have a successful experience. If you go in, again, being predetermined, like, oh, we need to do this, this, and this, I don't want to create too many constraints in order for it to be successful in my mind.
Okay. So I'm sort of wondering, and it might just be the nature of the relationship I have with the folks that show up because they were students. There's a lot of times when they just show up with questions, and there might be a question where everybody contributes, but a lot of times they really just want me to answer the question. And I try to like lay back from that because I really want it to be the communal thing. But I mean, I'm guessing that yours is a little bit different than that.
There's a little bit of that, yes.
Okay.
Whereas it depends if there are a full spectrum of people that will join Lean Coffee or Baltimore Lean Coffee. Anyone from what I would describe as that seasoned consultant, that has years of experience in the field, and they're more than willing and able to answer questions that somebody might pose. Sometimes they will pose the question directly to me. Sometimes it's for just, they'll leave it there and the group will answer it. And there will be a couple of people that will stand out that are really skilled and they can answer those questions.
Okay. The
interesting question is recently a new person, they joined. She wasn't looking for a specific question to answer. She was, I forget which country, she was somewhere in Europe. No, she was from Austria, I believe. And she just randomly wanted some type of human contact. She went on to Meetup, removed the proximity requirement, and found us and just clicked and scheduled and joined. And she had no idea what this Agile thing was or anything like that. And so she's
wow.
It was probably one of the best Lean Coffees we've had.
Contact. Wow.
That's really cool. Just disrupted everything, but it was the most, again, it was a very, very well received Lean Coffee because we get into these ruts where we just talk about the same things over and over again, which is fine. But she really made us look at the world through a different lens. And she wasn't trying to. She just wanted some additional contact.
That's great. So how does it work? Could you go step by step through how you run the meetings or how you facilitate the meetings? I guess it's a better way to say it.
Sure. When I actually found when it was in person, it was easier because I would just, bring my Post-it notes and my Sharpies with me. And I had a little Ziploc baggie with these things. I'd show up at the coffee shop. We did it at a coffee shop. We did it at an incubator.
Now, did you get permission from the coffee shop before you did it, or did you just like show up every?
I did. It was interesting. We would, there was a running club that we would compete with for seating.
Okay.
We would get there at 7:30 in the morning, and this damn running club, I would see them in the parking lot and I would run in to the coffee shop because they would grab several of the tables and push them together. And I'm like, Rrr. I mean, it was like the unspoken rule that first Friday, this was our table, right? There's a little bit of a turf war going.
Damn runners.
But we would, we'd have a little bit of snapping and singing and dancing. A little West Side Story reference there. But I asked the owner and he was like, absolutely. I mean, how would you feel as a small business owner that a dozen people would be committed to coming to your establishment once, one day and just buy a bunch of coffee and baked goods and all that versus just sitting there drinking water. So they welcomed us and and I feel compelled to find out how they're doing because we were there for a couple of years. Just haven't seen him for a couple of years now. Okay.
So you create the group, you set something up on Meetup to let people know about it.
Yeah. So the Meetup was an interesting, necessary, I wouldn't say it's an evil, but it's a necessary thing. Clearly, if, just the same
you're going to have a meeting, people have to know you're having it.
That's it. It's like, again, it's like doing training. You can be the best trainer on the planet, but if people don't know where to sign up and where to go and when to go, then it's a lost opportunity.
Right.
So I found Meetup. It seemed at the time, that would be the best course. And it was, for the longest time, it was free. It was because it was a small group. When you reach a certain amount of where people are members of a Meetup group, then it'll cost you.
Okay.
Fortunately, again, money wasn't an option. So that was the other thing. I never wanted to charge for attending a meetup. And so that was again, I think it's an excellent exchange. The cost to pay for meetup relative to the value that I get out of having this group come together. So I registered on Meetup. At some point, the Scrum Alliance picked it up. And so I now say the analytics that a large volume of people aren't discovering us through Meetup, they're discovering us through the Scrum Alliance.
Okay.
And it leads to, meetups in the Baltimore area, and it leads to us.
Yeah.
So established a meetup group.
Right.
And then finding a place that will be open to you. And then
if you're doing it virtually, you get a Zoom account or something like that.
And get a Zoom account, which again, each of these things are free in the early days. Again, it's just create the space, create the opportunity, and then kind of stick to it. We've been fortunate. There's only been a few really awkward moments. When you open to the world to have a public meeting, anybody can show up. People have different agendas. So there's only been a few instances where it got awkward, where people came in with very strong agendas to sell or something like that.
Oh, that would be not cool.
Right, but it kind of takes care of itself because it's not like people said, get out.
Nobody votes for the sales pitch.
That's right. So create a meetup, physical space if you can. Mm-hmm. If not, meetup, Zoom. And the other thing is, you're worried about somebody doing improper, you can set it so you don't see the link to the Zoom until you RSVP.
Oh, so you kind of screen them. Okay.
Yep.
I guess my way of doing that is I send it to all my students from the virtual classes, but they're the only people that get invited.
Right.
To the one I run. Okay. And so people show up and you go through, I guess, the basic rules with them, and then everybody contributes topics.
Yep. Set the initial context. And I have to be careful because you do this so many times, you start to forget. If you don't follow your checklist, then you're going to miss something. It's going to happen. So being present, introduce myself. When we were in person, this was much easier, where it was like, let's do a quick round. Hi, I'm Derek. I'm your host. Mm-hmm. I've been doing this for a while. Quick introductions. Because there's always one new person and you don't want them to feel excluded. Yeah. It is harder. It's harder virtually because you'll see people drift in and out a lot easier, more easily than you do in a physical. One, they know when it starts, they try to be there on time, and
they feel weird getting up and leaving.
Right. So there's that social pressure of not walking out.
Irish goodbye on Zoom and not
That's
even
right.
worry about it.
Just I'm out.
Yeah.
So introduce yourself, introduce yourselves. I like to say I inherited this from the Agile Leadership Network many years ago. It was, hey, before we get started, is there anybody that's looking for work or is hiring?
Oh, so that's good.
Yep. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and say, okay, before it was everybody have Post-it notes, Sharpies, go ahead and write down some ideas, things that you'd like to talk about first. Realize we're going to run out of time. Know that we're going to vote on which topics we're going to cover first. So just be assured that we're going to talk about the things that you all decide are the most important things. And when we run out of time, again, we're going to be assured to know that we had the best conversations we could in the time that we have together. So establish the rules, the process, and then reserve some time. Okay, we're going to take 3 to 5 minutes to start writing down some topics. Just lay it out there, and then be quiet, create space. And you see people, they'll do that. The part that has been very, very interesting it's very powerful, is managing it through, the flow of the conversations through voting, intermittent voting. It was always a mixed bag in person. You don't want to disrupt the flow of a conversation. Right. But at the same time, you do want to check in with everybody. It's like, do we want to keep having this conversation, or do we want to move on to another topic? But I lay that out as the rules, and then slowly creep my phone up whenever the timer was going off. And I tried not to disrupt the conversation.
But you would wave your phone in everyone's face.
I would hold it up and people would smile and laugh. I think
that's easier than like I have to interrupt people on Zoom to do it. I mean, There's no other way. Okay.
And I've evolved my practice, and it's part of my lead in. I'll say, I've been in Lean Coffee sometimes where the conversation was so good and powerful that I didn't want to disrupt the flow of conversation. And so I have stepped away from doing the timing, other than it's less rigid and more just reading the room to see, what's the momentum of the conversation? Is there any dead space in order to, not to say, are we done with this? It's not about doing that. I'll instead say something like, is there anything else somebody would like to add to this? So it's, instead of just cutting it off, just keep seeing, does it still have wind in its sails to keep going forward? So
I want to ask a question about that. So one of the things that I have done is, everybody pitches a topic, and this is a pretty small group. I'm usually got like, 5 to 8 people. Whoever's topic it was, I usually ask them to kind of introduce it to the group. Like if that one gets voted on, tell us a little bit more about it. And then what's kind of just become a natural practice in this group is when somebody got what they needed, they just say, okay, I'm good. Like we can vote when the time box, I still have them vote when the time box ends, or the person will be like, I'm good. And then we vote and move on. So that's another way you might, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that's a little selfish, but.
No, again, what is the value we're trying to get out of this experience?
Yeah.
And again, it just, I keep saying, I just want to create the space. And so if they want to evolve kind of the rules, if I don't see it that's diametrically opposed to why we're doing this, I'll roll with it. If this one group wants to evolve the process to say, no, I think we really should enforce a time box. Okay, let's experiment. Let's see how that works, and reflect on that later. Did the time box work, or do you think maybe we shouldn't do that next time? But you just never know who's going to show up. And I'm not keeping a list of, so-and-so likes to talk about this and so-and-so likes this more.
Okay. So I want to go over some of this stuff. So the way that I do this part is everybody contributes topics. I usually give them a couple minutes after I've reviewed the basic rules, just like, you talked about doing. And then everyone votes. Everyone gets 3 votes, and whatever topic gets the most votes, that's the one we start with. And I usually go 5-minute time box, 3-minute time box, and then 2-minute time boxes until we get a majority thumbs down. So if you're not familiar with this, what would happen is that after we would have a conversation for 5 minutes, and then everyone votes thumbs up to keep going with the conversation, or thumbs down to move on. And if they vote thumbs up, we stick with it for 3 more minutes, and then we vote again. And if they vote thumbs up again, we go 2 minutes, and then we'll keep going in 2-minute segments until people say that they're ready to move on. But you sometimes just organically find that the thing ends and you can move on then.
Right, because especially we never had a problem with topics when it was physical, but when it's been virtual, there's that extra level of friction or a barrier of entry to get ideas onto the board. That board, what I've been using is a free public Trello board. And, Trello, whatever it is, it used to be like an Agile Zen or something like that, or a Lean Kit board.
Yeah,
it's something. Miro. Yeah, I'm trying to lower or Miro or Mural canvas, removing the barrier of entry for people to add the idea. That's what I'm trying to do. But I can't ignore that there is a barrier, because people are like, I can't add a card. I can't edit a card. I'm like, okay, well, you got to log in.
And it becomes technical support kind of a thing.
Yes. And that takes up time. And so getting those, where I'm going with this is sometimes there are very few ideas, very few topics that we want to cover given the group. And so we could sit there in silence or disband partway into the conversation if they got the answer they were seeking in a very short period of time, and we just don't create more and more space for conversation.
Yeah. Okay. So Miro is a great tool to use online. Mural as well. There's also Lean Coffee Table. So I'm in one every month with Jim Benson. and Tony and DeMaria Barry, and they use Lean Coffee Table. And some great things that does, it automatically runs the timer and automatically does the voting.
Nice.
So that makes it a lot easier. One of the things, like Derek just went through some stuff that's given me ideas for how to improve the one I'm running. And one of the things that I did not learn about, I don't know why, when I learned how to do Lean Coffee, I don't ever remember being aware of the fact that you were supposed to have this space to capture things you learned. So I have a column on the one that I use for things we learned. And so if in Miro, every topic is color coded, and then we add post-its for things we learned in that color coding. So you can always tell what topic it maps back to. But the idea is that if people have an idea to share or something they heard that sparked something for them or a link they want to let people know about, we all put them on the board. And then at the end of the meeting, I send a picture, a screenshot of the board with all the topics and all the ideas to everybody who was there. So there's some kind of takeaway they have from the time that we spent together. Whereas when I learned to do it, it was just the conversation, which was great. And I was kind of responsible for taking my own notes. But I know that when I'm taking notes, I'm not really hearing what other people are saying. So I missed some stuff, I think. So
I was just listening to you. You just gave me an idea, and that is sending a screenshot after the fact. So it used to be, I would be, as a host, snapping pictures, so during the meetup, so I could share with the community what we're doing either on social media or to the attendees directly. But that screenshot is that missing link, because I had early conversations when we went virtual, and I said, hey, this would be great content online. People could really enjoy this. Do you mind if I record this? And a couple of people were like, no.
I don't want to talk about my company if you're going to record it. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I was like, okay, I'll respect that. That being said, sharing that screenshot.
Plus, you really want to listen back to the whole thing anyway, just to get to that one point, that might not be a good use of time.
So you're saying that you do that. I've used Lean Coffee for a couple different reasons.
Okay.
One of them is the social component of the meetup, but I've also used Lean Coffee to manage a meeting. And because there might be, if I know that there was somebody in the room that is a stronger personality and will control the room, I'll use Lean Coffee.
Oh, wow.
Same process to lay it out. Everybody understands the rules.
Yeah.
But recently, the joke at work is no agenda, no attenda, is what people say. And we'll do this with the Lean Coffee. What I've done is we'll list out the topics, the agenda of the meeting as cards. We will limit with, we'll focus one conversation at a time, like we do in Lean Coffee,
right?
But really enforce that timer in order that you can manage that strong personality and don't let them monopolize the conversation. But the difference between your aha moments or the ideas at the end of the Lean Coffee, that last column after the conversation is done, what I would use is, what are the action items? What are what are we supposed to do after this meeting? So I love that last column. It's flexible. This is a framework as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. And you can leverage that last column to do multiple things.
It's just interesting to me, whether it's an action column or a learn column, that is the reason we do everything, is to try to learn something. And when my wife was like a huge stickler for it, it's like, you have to have this in there. And I'm like, but wait, that is the whole point of doing it. To have something to be like, yes, I remember we had that conversation. It's not some random scribbled note that I can't remember what it was for.
Yep.
I also find this is a great way to get people to network and provide support to one another, especially, we've had a bunch about just like, how do you cope with working during the pandemic kind of topics, not just about tactical stuff. Cool.
Yeah, there's range from blocking and tackling, basic Scrum questions, like how much ready backlog is the right amount of ready backlog, or how do I deal with a boss who wants to do time tracking when I'm trying to just maximize flow? We have those type of questions. And then there are the more, I hate the way they manage people at my office. How would you deal with, just all, I don't want to go back to the office. What do you all think? Are you all being asked to come back to the office? So it's just being a support network as well. So there's an information network, a support network, and sometimes it's also a cheerleading squad. It's about, we're not just cheerleading squad, but one, supporting one another, but helping one another. If I can help somebody find a job, by all means.
I mean, that's been a focus of conversation a number of times. It's like, how do I get an interview? Why can't I get an interview? What do I do in the interview? Things like that.
Yeah.
Cool. So you're going to have a big celebration, I guess, for your 100th Lean Coffee. What are you going to do?
If the damn variants slow down a little bit, the hope is to have, like a happy hour, an afternoon, instead of a coffee, have a drink, which is kind of funny. I did Lean Coffees for.
I think it'd be a little more edgy if you did your normal morning one and had everyone drink. Start the day out.
Those have to go on to the office.
Shots this morning instead.
Yeah. But yeah, we did, when I was with Naval Cyber Warfare doing Lean Coffees with them for a while, they pivoted from doing coffees to beers. So they would go to the local O Club or E Club and do their lean coffee, except they would have booze. I guess we call it lean booze. But that's the hope, is if we could recognize versus just let it go by. How often do meetup groups keep going? It is long. Yeah. And I'm wearing this shirt. So we had the Unconference back in 2015. That was the first really.
I remember when you were getting ready for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was such an awesome time. Just creating the space for this group in Baltimore. It's kind of like a coming home. If we could do, again, some type of bigger meetup for 100. Yeah. For 100 celebration of 100 meetups, that would be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And so you brought up another thing too. If you're planning on starting one of these, a lot of people do them in the morning, but you don't have to. Like the first one I went to was an Agile conference. Like Howard Sublett would always host them at like 8:00 in the morning, which at a conference to be somewhere at 8:00 in the morning, I just don't even understand it. And I'm not a morning person. And I get down there, and the first person I remember the first one I went to, the first person I saw was Becky Hartman. She was like, "Hi." And I was like, "Oh my God. Leave me
Becky
alone."
Wearing purple. Yeah. Was she wearing a purple tutu? Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, they're all like, early in the morning, and I'm not that guy. So I'm much happier in the evenings doing these or the afternoon. But you find the type that works for you, I guess.
Exactly. So that's another reason why I started Lean Coffee, is the meetups were always in the evening. Mm-hmm. And I had a young family and I had to travel for work. And so time with the family was precious. And so that was one of my things, was I'm going to have to do this in the morning. We'll see how this works out, but this will not impact my family time. And so, whatever works for you. At the end of the day, it's actually for you. You're creating this space and bringing these people together, but you're the one who's reaping the benefits of all bringing them together. So whatever is going to work for you, morning, noon, or night, just experiment with it.
Yeah. And you said you what you get out of it is that you're giving back, you're creating a space. And for me, it's fuel for ideas. So when I go to them in person, to be completely honest, I'm scraping ideas for podcasts. So I would go to one of them in person just to try to get some kind of spark, like, oh, that would be a cool topic. The ones I do with my students, part of it is to figure out, I want to maintain the connection. I want to understand what things I'm going over in class are not lasting in their heads. So maybe I can reinforce that. But again, I'm looking for like coaching stories or things that I can turn into a podcast or something like that. So, you do get a lot. You learn a lot from people in these things, I think.
Yes. Yeah. And I believe we wind up in our own little echo chamber after a while. And so that's what's kind of nice. It's not all, depending on the groups we run with, is it all Scrum? Is it all Kanban? Is it all safe? Whatever. And it's this echo chamber. And so you bring everybody together, and if they can be respectful of one another, and you just create that space, then, like I said, I think everybody benefits from the experience, just from the differing views.
Yeah, Cool. All right. So I want to do the contact thing, but then I want to do the other topic.
Okay.
So if people have follow-up questions for you, Derek, what's the best way for them to reach you?
They can reach me, derekhuether.com, Twitter, Instagram. It's at Derek Huether, which is Huether. You can also find me via agilebaltimore.org.
Okay. And I'll make sure to include a link to that as well in case people want to come check out your Lean Coffee. All right. So I am going to include this next part in this podcast, but I'm also going to cut it out as a separate video.
Okay.
So Derek works at Atlassian. I do not work at Atlassian. The bane of my existence is people that come to my CSM and CSPO classes and want to ask me questions about Jira. And now I actually say in the beginning, like, I am not a Jira guy. Like, if nothing, Jira is awesome, but I am not the person to go to with questions about Jira. And I always say, like, there's a wealth of information on the Atlassian website. There's tutorials, there's all kinds of things. So you work there, Derek.
I do.
And I want to make all my students watch this video.
Okay.
So if they have questions about how to use it, configure it, anything like that, like where should people go?
So there should be a lot of different free resources, paid and free resources available. Atlassian's goal is to unleash the potential of every team. Okay. Doesn't matter if it's a delivery, program portfolio, an enterprise level team, unleash the potential of every team.
Regardless of what flavor of Agile they're doing, right?
Regardless of not just Agile, but just how do they do their work?
Okay.
You know, are they Agilists? Are they IT workers? Are they in HR, finance?
Yeah.
It's irrelevant. Unleash the potential of every team.
Okay.
And so their products are there. They have all these different products as part of an overall platform to help unleash that potential. That being said, these are products. You need to learn how to use them and leverage these products relative to how you do your work.
Okay.
Change the product or configure the product to align with either how you do work today or how you want to do your work. So not change how you do work to align to a product. That's been an anti-pattern I've seen for years, particularly with Jira. It's where people.
I want to make a comment. It's like the way I always express this is, if you buy the tool first, you develop habits to match the tool. If you develop your habits first, then you can pick a tool that matches them. But the problem now with being virtual is, I used to say, do it with a board and Post-its and Sharpies. Figure out how you work, then pick a tool. But that's not an option where they have to go straight to a tool.
Right. The goal here is we kind of got the cart in front of the horse for a period of time, in that Jira evolved over a long period of time where it was an issue tracking system. Mm-hmm. And now it became an agile, a tool of choice for scaling teams, because we have global sized organizations. And so these teams are interconnected, and we don't have the ability to go to a physical board. What I do see over time is you're seeing more evolution of products that are stripping away the constraints of an issue tracking system or a item tracking system, where it is back to canvas-based, board-based. So if we can remove that and still provide that connectedness, that.
But you're also scaling up too, so you can do program and portfolio level now as well. It's not just a team by team kind of a thing.
Sure, absolutely. So OKRs, objectives and key results, are critical for organizations. Are very, very outcome focused, goal focused. And so the platform is evolving to encapsulate that. We want to make sure that the teams that are operating in Jira, Trello, Azure DevOps, whatever team level tool of choice that the teams are in, that aggregates up to the top, so that the leadership recognizes that the outputs that the teams are committing or completing align to the outcomes that are important to the organization. So, so there's all these different tools to solve the different problems for different levels of the organization. Okay.
And so where do they go to see all these tutorials and learn about the university? And
I don't think I had mentioned that quite yet.
Well, that's why I'm here, Derek, to help get that out.
So the tools are there, but also, so on the inside and the outside, how do you get information? One, YouTube is a huge resource where there's all kinds of people are the leading expert, on different products. But if you go to the Atlassian website, there is a very strong community component that is free. And so you can create, you can create an Atlassian account. You can go to the community site. There's a coach's corner. So there's all kinds of white papers and tutorials. There's a global community where you just you identify the product that you have a question about, or even maybe the process that you want to talk about. Go to that, find that community, ask the question. And not only do you have the community as a whole that is willing to step up and answer your question and have a conversation around, but there are also Atlassians. We're on the backside looking at the community, answering questions as well. And so It's just like any message board.
Free support, basically.
Yeah, it's free support. And I see that all the time. I mean, there's also context-specific help, but you had mentioned we have Atlassian University. So if you want some basic training, you can get some free basic training, or you can get some paid training. So if you want to go down the path of certification, then you can.
Okay.
But Atlassian University, blogs, community site, even on our community site now, we have all these YouTube videos. And so if you're curious about, there's a lot of free and available information out there for people to, whatever interesting question they might have, there'll be an answer.
All right. Thank you very much, man. So I'm going to make sure we include links to all that. And if you're watching this, please do not expect me to be able to answer your questions about Jira, because I am not qualified. I won't be able to do it well.
Right. Jira, and it's recognizing Jira or any other tool is not Agile. It's not Scrum. There is a tool, a platform.
That should be like a little TikTok video of you saying that over and over again.
Yeah, I describe, I look at processes, people, metrics, and tools, and if you recognize that these are interoperating systems, and they're all dependent on one another, but they're still independent. Don't conflate. Don't believe that they're all one thing. And if I say this is Agile, no, this is not, we just have to make sure that we understand the differences.
All right, cool. Thank you very much, Jack. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you for watching. Derek, I hope you and your family have a great holiday, great New Year's.
Thank you, you too.
And we'll do more in the next year, where hopefully this frickin' pandemic will finally be over.
That's right.
All right, thanks, man.
Yep.
If you learn to work the old way, but the new way is what you need, my job.